Hello, this is Eli Sheubi. We will now begin the laws of Shehita, the laws of kosher slaughter, having finished the laws of prohibited foods. And this is the last section in Sefer Kedusha, dealing with uh, different uh, uh, different commandments that deal with holiness, or things uh, that we restrict ourselves regarding them or refrain from, whether they are prohibited sexual relations or prohibited foods. Um, and Hilchot Shechita is the last of those. Uh, okay, so we'll now begin. הלכות שחיטה, יש בכללן 5 מצוות, 3 מצוות עשה ו2 מצוות לא תעשה, וזהו פירתן. The laws of kosher slaughter include 5 commandments, 3 positive commandments, and 2 negative commandments, prohibitions, and these are their details. Aleph, לשחוט ואחר כך יאכל, to slaughter and only then eat, meaning that this is not a commandment that you must go and slaughter an animal, but rather if you wish to eat meat, then we are instructed in this mitzvah to slaughter that animal prior to eating it. Bet, שלא לשחוט אותו ואת בנו ביום אחד, to not slaughter a parent animal and its child in the same day, in one day. גימל, לכסות דם חיה ועוף. Third, to cover the blood of an undomesticated animal or a bird which were slaughtered. We pour their blood into the ground and then cover onto the ground and then cover the blood. Daled shelo likach ha'em al habanim, for to not take the mother bird with her children. And so if there's a nest and there's a mother with her children or eggs, you cannot take both the mother and the children. Here we see the word al does not mean on, but rather with, aim. We saw this previously also with regards to Pesach, where we say al masot umrorim yocheluhu, that the korban Pesach should be eaten with masot umrorim, not on masot umrorim, but rather at the time that masot and maror are laid before you. So here we see the same meaning of this word al, which means with. And fifth, to send the mother bird if you did take it with the children. So if you took the mother and the children, you must send the mother bird away. And this is a commandment. And by sending her away, you also refrain from violating the prohibition. This is a lav shenitaq la'aseh, as we'll see in one of the later chapters of this section. And the explanation of these commandments are in the following chapters. Perik Rishon. Okay, we'll now begin the first chapter. This chapter will deal with the general definitions of what slaughter is, its source, both for behema, haya, and off, for domesticated animals, undomesticated animals, and birds, and as well as the proper way to do the slaughter and the proper knife that needs to be used. All of these will be the generalities, and later chapters will go more into detail regarding some of these halachot. אוקיי, פרק ראשון, הלכה א', מצוות עשה שישחוט מי שרצה לאכול בשר בהמה חיה ועוף, ואחר כך יאכל, שנאמר, וזבחת מבקרך ומשעונך. It is a positive commandment that a person who wishes to eat meat of a domesticated animal, an undomesticated animal, or a bird, that he must first slaughter and only then eat. As it says, וזבחת מבקרך ומשעונך כאשר ציוויתיך. And you must slaughter from your cattle and from your flock, as I have commanded you. Because we see this word vizavahta, which means to slaughter. So here we learn that the Torah commands us to slaughter our behemot, our domesticated animals. ונאמר בבחור בעלמום, אך כאשר יאכל את השבי ואת האייל, כן תאכלנו. הלמדת שחיה כבהמה לעניין שחיטה. And it says regarding the firstborn of a Baal Mum, we have regarding the firstborns of your cattle, they receive a status of kedusha, that the firstborn must be slaughtered like qadashim, like right, they're not considered hulin, they're not considered unsanctified meat, but rather sanctified meat, and only the kohanim may eat the firstborn, unless they have some blemish, in which case, if they have a blemish, then they do not receive that status, and they remain chulin and are permitted remain unsanctified and permitted for all to eat. So it says regarding the firstborn that has a blemish, meaning that this animal is permitted to all and not only to kohanim, and is considered chulin. אך כאשר יאכל את השביעות אייל כן תאכלנו. But just as you eat the gazelle and the deer, so too you shall eat it, meaning this firstborn with a blemish. Meaning, so just as you should eat, so from here we learn that the undomesticated animal, right, because the tsevi and the ayal, the deer and the gazelle are undomesticated animals, and are considered hayot. So you learn from this pasuk that hayot are considered like behemot, like domesticated animals for the purposes of shehita, since the pasuk juxtaposes them one against the other. ובעוף הוא אומר, אשר יסוד שד חיה או עוף, אשר יאכל ושפך את דמו וכיסהו בעפר. מלמד ששפיכת דם העוף כשפיכת דם החיה. And regarding birds, it says, the pasuk says in Vayikra, a person who shall hunt or a hunter who should, a person who will hunt an undomesticated animal or a bird, which will be eaten, he should spill its blood and cover it with dirt. So from here, this pasuk teaches that because it says v'shafach et damo, he should spill its blood. This means that the spilling of the blood of the bird is the same as the spilling of the blood of the undomesticated animal. And since we already learned that the undomesticated animal is also killed via shehita, and now so too the bird is via shehita. הלכה ב' והלכות שחיטה בכולן אחת היא, לפיכך השוחט בהמה או חיה או עוף מברך תחילה אשר קדשנו במצוותיו ובסעודה, ואם לא ברך בין בשוחט בין במזיד הבשר מותר. And the laws of shehita, of kosher slaughter, regarding all of them, regarding all three of these types of animals, are one, meaning it's all one mitzvah. And therefore, a person who slaughters a domesticated animal, an undomesticated animal, or a bird must bless first, like prior to doing the slaughtering, who has sanctified us in his commandments and commanded us on the shehita. And it does not say, and there's not a special beracha for each one of these three, but rather it's one beracha for all three of them, since they are all one mitzvah. And if he did not make the blessing, whether he did so unintentionally or intentionally, didn't bless, the meat is permitted regardless. The permission of the meat is not connected to having had said the blessing or not. ואסור לאכול מן השחוטה כל זמן שהיא מפרכסת, והאוכל ממנה קודם שתצא נפשה עובר בלא תעשה, והרי הוא בכלל לא תאכלו על הדם. And it is prohibited to eat from slaughtered meat, all the while that it is mefarkeset. After the slaughtering, once the animal is slaughtered, it does not just die immediately, but rather it starts to have sorts of tremors, and the body starts to shake as the final, as once the head is severed from the body, and the final nerve signals from the brain are being sent to the rest of the body, it starts to shake and get all of those out. And this is called pirkus, So while it is mefarkes, and it is doing this, it is having these tremors, it is prohibited to eat from the meat of this animal, all the while that it is doing this pirkus. And a person who eats from this slaughtered animal prior to its soul leaving its body, meaning so the pirkus period is considered that the nafsha, its soul is still in the body. Anyone who does this violates a biblical prohibition, uh, and it is included in the prohibition of lo tochilu al haddam, that you should not eat with blood. Right? Again, the same meaning al haddam, al meaning with, not on. And he does not receive lashes for this prohibition. Um, this prohibition, lo tochilu al haddam, is considered a lav shebichlelot, a prohibition that has a general meaning, and that there are a number of uh, prohibitions that are seemingly unrelated that are all included into this one pasuk. So the primary uh, place where this prohibition, this the meaning of this prohibition primarily refers to ben sorer umoreh, which we will see in Sefer Shoftim near the end of the Mishne Tora. But they included within this pasuk a number of different prohibitions. One of them being not to eat from a an animal that was slaughtered prior to it finishing its tremors. But since it is a general prohibition and these meanings are unrelated, uh, it is not you do not receive lashes for this prohibition, since you do not receive lashes for a lav shebichlelot. ואינו לוקה, and he does not receive lashes. ומותר לחתוך ממנה אחר שחיטה קודם שתצא נפשה, ומולחו יפה יפה, ומדיחו יפה יפה, ומניחו עד שתמות, ואחר כך יאכלנו. But it is permitted to cut from this slaughtered animal after the slaughtering was done, and prior to its soul leaving it. And if you want to eat this raw meat, then you must salt it well and rinse it well, and then you must let the meat sit until the main animal finishes dying. Meaning, so even though you cut this piece of meat from an animal that is in the process of dying, you must wait for the animal to die prior to eating it, and then after he dies, then you may eat it. Um, Note here that he does not say that we need to rinse it first. Regarding the laws of eating of eating raw meat, and the process of what's permitted regarding raw meat. Rabbeinu talked about that in Hilchot Ma'achalot Asurot in chapter 6 there. Go see that chapter for more details on that. הלכה ג' דגים וחרבים אינן צריכין שחיטה, אלא אסיפתן היא המתרת אותן. הרי הוא אומר, אסון ובקר ישחט להם ומסע להם, אם את כל דרך הים יאסף להם ומסע להם, אסיפת דגים כשחיטת בקר אסון. ובחרבים נאמר, אוסף יחסיל, ואסיפה לבדה. Fish and locusts do not require slaughter. Rather, just by gathering them, that is what permits them. The verse says in Sefer B'Midbar, when God is scolding Bnei Israel for complaining about food, he says, if the flock and cattle would be slaughtered for them, and would that suffice for them? And if all the fish of the sea were gathered for them, would that suffice for them? So here, since we see the word shehita regarding the flock and the cattle, we see the word gathering regarding the fish. So from here we see that it is that gathering of the fish is like the slaughter of the cattle and the flock. And regarding the locusts, there's a pasuk in Yeshaya. This is also just an asmachta bilvad, like the first pasuk as well, but here it's clear since it's not from the Torah. Osef Hasil, the gathering of the locusts. So here we see also that it is only in the gathering, it's all the gathering alone. לפיכך אם הם מתו מאליהן בתוך המים, מותרים, ומותר לאוכלן חיים. And therefore, if they died of their own accord in the water, right, without you gathering them from the water, right, without gathering the fish from the water and then them dying, whether they died on their own, they are permitted, since you have to gather them from the water, right? The second that you pick them up, right, it's permitted, and it's permitted to even eat them while they are alive. הלכה ד' זביחה זו האמורה בתורה סתם, צריך לפרש אותה ולדע באיזה מקום מן הבהמה שוחטים, וכמה הוא שיעור השחיטה, ובאיזה דבר שוחטים, ומתי שוחטים, והיכן שוחטים, וכיצד שוחטים, ומה הם הדברים המפסידים את השחיטה, ומי הוא השוחט. This zebiha, this slaughter that was mentioned in the Torah alone, right? The pasuk says, and you shall slaughter from your cattle, from your flock, without explaining what this word zebiha means. We need to explain it. We need to interpret it, and to know in which place of the animal do we slaughter, like where on the animal do we slaughter, and what is the amount that needs to be slaughtered, and with what do we slaughter, when do we slaughter, where do we slaughter, in which places are we allowed to be in slaughtering, how do we slaughter, what are the things that negate the slaughter, that make the slaughter invalid, and who is allowed to slaughter. ועל כל הדרכים האלו סיוונו בתורה ואמר, וזבחת מבקריך ומצאנך כאשר ציוויתיך, ואכלת בשעריך, שכל הדברים האלו על פה ציווה בהן, שאר תורה שבעל פה, שהיא הנקראת מצווה, כמו שביארנו בתחילת חיבור זה. And in all of these issues, God commanded us in the Torah and said, and you must slaughter it, from your cattle, from your flock, as I have commanded you. The word kasher siviticha, right? As I have commanded you, and you can eat in your gates. Right? That all of these things, right? All of these issues that were just laid out are kasher siviticha, as I've commanded you, that orally He commanded us in them, like all the rest of the oral Torah, which is called mitzvah, as Rabbeinu explained in the beginning, in the introduction to this book, right? In the beginning, in the Akdamat of the Mishne Tora, he talks about that there is the Torah shebichtav and the Torah shebe'al peh, and the mitzvah is called the Torah shebe'al peh, and that is what it means when the pasuk says "Ka'asher siviticha." Halacha he. מקום השחיטה מן החי הוא הסוואר, וכל הסוואר כשר לשחיטה. So now we are dealing with the proper place where the shehita must be done on the animal, in the animal. The place of slaughter in the live animal is the neck, and the entire neck is valid for slaughter. כיצד? בוושת מתחילת המקום כשחותכים אותו, מתקבץ עד מקום שיסעיר, ויתחיל להיות פרסים כקרס. זהו מקום השחיטה בוושת. So in the kosher slaughter, there are two things that must be slaughtered: the kaneh and the veshet. The kaneh being the trachea, which carries the windpipe, and the veshet, or the esophagus, which carries the food from the mouth to the stomachs of the cow. So regarding the veshet, regarding the esophagus, so we have the upper limit and the lower limit where the slaughter may be done. The upper limit is from the place that when a person cuts it, it the esophagus constricts. Um, if you look at the esophagus consists of two layers, and in any place where you cut it after the shahita is done, it will constrict. For people watching the YouTube channel, this is a picture of the qaneh. This is the trachea, and here up top is the veshet, and you can see here that it constricts after the slaughter, and it does this, right? It has this weird shape, right? It's not a hollow tunnel as it is when it's alive. Right, so this happens everywhere. So Rabbanu here says that from the first place, from the first place where this happens, and this is at the top of the esophagus, where the laryngopharynx, the cavity uh, connecting the esophagus with the pharynx, where the mouth, where the opening in the mouth, and then the cavity that connects the mouth with the esophagus, where that occurs. For a picture of that, see here, again, for people on the YouTube channel, this is the trachea, this large cavity. This smaller cavity on the side is the esophagus. Here is the mouth. The food comes in through here. This is the pharynx, the area that connects the mouth with the trachea and the esophagus. And then here, this little tunnel over here that connects the pharynx with the esophagus. This is the area where this is the upper limit of the esophagus that is valid for kosher slaughter. And then the bottom limit of the kosher slaughter, עד מקום שיסעיר ויתחיל להיות פרסין ככרס. זהו מקום השחיטה וושת. And this is until the place that starts to have hairs and starts to be little spikes like the keres, like the this is one of the stomachs of the cow has four stomachs. This is called the rumen. We'll talk more about the digestive system of the cow in later chapters, but the rumen, which is the first stomach that the food goes into when he originally eats, has these little hair-like papilla, and that's the lining of that stomach is lined with these papilla, which are these these small hair-like things, and the esophagus near the end of at the end of its at the end of the esophagus also has similar types of hairs. This area is called the reticular groove, where it meets with the reticular rumen. The reticula is one of the stomachs, and the rumen is the other stomach, but they're actually connected in one organ. They have some differences. We'll go into that later. And in this connection where the esophagus meets this area, this is called the reticular groove, which is the bypass that the food goes from the esophagus into the stomach. And the floor of that groove also has sharp claw-like papilla, which Rabbeinu calls perasin kakeres, or ad makom sheyas'ir. So these papilla are very similar to the papilla of the rumen, and this is the end of the place where the shehita may be done. And so if you see in this picture, and so here's the qaneh, here's the veshet, this green one, and it goes here until over here it meets the, or it continues until it meets the stomachs. This isn't a great picture here, but that's the principle. This is the proper place of the shahita in the esophagus. And it's a very large area. Usually, shahita itself, it'll be done somewhere in the middle, and it'll be very easy to not be close to the edges. רחביו, שחט למעלה ממקום זה, וזהו הנקרא תרבס הוושת, או למטה ממקום זה, והוא מתחילת בני מעיים, שחיטתו פסולה. If he slaughtered from above this place, right? So that was the pharynx area, right? This or the tarbes haveshet is the pharynx, and it's called thus because tarbes means the like a front yard of a home, or you have the yard that serves as the entrance to a house. So too, the pharynx is similar to that in that it is a type of opening, or this open area, a cavity, that through that you enter into the esophagus. So it's called the tarbes haveshet for this reason, and it is equivalent to the pharynx. So if you slaughter above this area that we said, or under this area, right, under the area that I said of the reticular groove, right? That, and this is the beginning of the bnei ma'ayim, the beginning of the inner organs, right? The area of the stomach and so on and so forth. Then the slaughter is invalid. ושיעור תרבס הוושת שאינו ראוי לשחיטה למעלה בבהמה וחיה כדי שיוחז בשתי אצבעותיו ובעוף הכל לפי גודלו וקוטנו. And in the domesticated animal and the undomesticated animal, which are larger animals, this sorry, I skipped. And the measurement of the tarbes haveshet, of the pharynx, that is not fit for slaughtering on the upper limit in the domesticated animal and the undomesticated animal. That area is about the width of the length of two finger widths. Right, so you put your two fingers, and that's about the distance that area is. And in the chicken, or sorry, in the bird, in any bird, it goes according to the size of the bird, whether it's a large bird or a small bird. Some birds are very large, and then it'll be much larger, and some birds, like a chicken, are very small, and then it'll be very small. وإذا هو مقام الشحيتة بقناة مش شبوي كوفع والماتة عاد غوش كناف هرئة كشتمشوخ بهما صبغة لرعوث زي هو مقام الشحيتة بقناة. Okay, and now that we finished with the esophagus, now Rabbenu delineates the area of the proper slaughter in the trachea. So what is the place of slaughter in the trachea? From the shipui kova. Is another for people on the YouTube page. So this is a picture of the trachea is made up of rings, right? So here you can see like the earlier rings of the trachea, and then near the fine and these rings are they encompass the right, they go all the way from the beginning of the trachea all the way down until the lungs, right? Because they carry the air from the mouth to the lungs, and they're made up of these rings, which do not cover the entire way around, but rather only partially. And the other end, right here, you see them entire way around it, but at the other end of the picture, which you can't see because this is a side cut, so at the other end, it's a little open. It's sealed by by a membrane, not by the cartilage, by this cartilage. The only exception is the final the final ring, which you can see here in this left one is this bigger one, which is a little larger, and it covers the entire way around. After that, you have this thing, which is called the shipui kova. So this shipui kova, if you slaughter from this shipui kova and under, uh, and the shipui kova is what is called the um, where the thyroid cartilage. So from this thyroid cartilage and downwards, that is the part of the shehita that is permitted, right? And this last piece of this last ring, which covers the whole way around, is called the cricoid. Okay, so if you cut from this thyroid cartilage and under, then the shehita is valid. Here you also see it as this part, right? So we said this is the esophagus of the trachea. Here is the sorry, it's this one. This is the thyroid cartilage, and then this 1 and 2 is the cricoid, which in this picture is also cut, right? But it would wrap all the way around. Okay, so that is the upper limit, and the lower limit is until the edge of the top of the edge of the lung, so that when the animal bends its neck in order to graze, right? So here in this picture, for example, right? So here we have the lung, right? And here's the the trachea, which leads into the lung, right? So when he bends his neck in order to graze, by stretching, he also stretches this area of the lung a little bit. So then the final border of the lung is where is the lower limit of the proper slaughter of the trachea. So with these two limits, this is the proper place of the slaughter in the trachea. וכל שכנגד המקום הזה מבחוץ נקרא סבר, and any area of the skin of right from the outer area from מבחוץ, from the outer area of the animal, or any part of his skin that is opposite this whole region, that is what is called savav. That is what is called the neck, right? So, and that neck is where is the area of the proper slaughter. הלכה ח' אנסה הבהמה עצמה ומשכה סברה הרבה, או שאנס השוחט את הסימנים ושחט למעלה, ושחט במקום שחיטה בסבואר, ונמצאת השחיטה בקנה או בבושת שלא במקום שחיטה, הרי זו ספק נבלה. If the animal, right, this is now in the process of slaughtering, if the animal forced or pulled its neck very forcefully, or that the slaughterer pulled the animal's neck and pulled the simanim, pulled out the trachea or the esophagus, and pulled them upwards, right? So they weren't in their normal position, but rather they were stretched out a little bit farther than they usually would go. And then he slaughters in this in this place of the neck, right? Meaning not in the proper place of where normally you would slaughter on on the skin of the neck, but it ends up being that the slaughter of the trachea and the esophagus was done properly, but not in the proper place where normally the shehita is done. So right, because it was stretched out, so you end up slaughtering the trachea and the esophagus, but you don't do it in the proper place in the neck, right? So then this is a safek nevela, because since the since the trachea and the esophagus were cut properly, um, but it wasn't done in the proper place of the neck, so we aren't sure, and we call this a safiq. We call this a nevela, the animal that died, that was slaughtered improperly, but only out of doubt. וצריך השוחט שישחוט באמצע הסבב, ואם שחט מן הסדרין, שחיטתו כשרה. And the butcher should slaughter from the middle of the neck, right? This removes any doubt, and that's the ideal place that he should cut. And if he slaughters from the side, right, he doesn't come from the bottom, but rather he comes from the side of the neck and cuts that way, his slaughter is valid as well. וכמה הוא שיעור שחיטה, שני הסימנים, שהן הקנה והוושת. And what is what is the proper amount or measurement of the shehita, of the proper slaughter? They are it is that both of these two signs, both of these two, of the trachea and the esophagus, that both of them are cut. השחיטה המעולה שיחתכו שניהן בין בבהמה בין בעוף ולזה יתכוון השוחט. The ideal slaughter is that both of them are cut completely, regardless of whether it is a domesticated animal or a bird. And this is what the butcher should intend to do. He should intend to cut both of them. ואם שחט רוב אחד מהן בעוף ורוב שניים בבהמה ובחיה, שחיטתו כשרה. And if the butcher cut the majority of only one of them in the bird and a majority of two of them in the domesticated animal or in the undomesticated animal, then the slaughter is valid. Meaning, so a majority of the semen, a majority of the trachea, or a majority of the esophagus is considered to be equivalent to cutting it, or cutting all of it. And so too in the bird, we only require one, whereas in the behema and the chaya, we require both. לחיות. שחט האחד כולו וחצי השני בבהמה, שחיטתו פסולה. If he slaughtered one of them entirely, right? So he cut the entirety of the trachea, and only half of the other one, and half of the esophagus in a behema or in a chaya, then it's in a domesticated animal, then it's the slaughter is invalid, since half is not considered majority, and therefore it counts as if he didn't cut the second pipe. רובו של לזה ורובו של לזה, אף על פי שלא שחט מכל אחד מהן אלא יתר על חציו כחוט השערה, הרי זו כשרה. כיוון ששחט יתר על חציו במשהו, רובו הוא. If he did a majority of this one and a majority of that one, even though he did not slaughter of either one of them, right? Or he only slaughtered in both of them just a little bit more than half, even a little bit more of like the amount of a strand of hair, this is considered a valid slaughter. Since he slaughtered more than half, even bimashihu, even something, this is considered a majority. الخيود ألف شحت حسيو של לזה وحسيو של לזה אפילו בעוף שחיטתו פסולה. If he slaughtered half of this one and half of that one, even in the bird, the slaughter is invalid. قנה שהיה חסיו פסוק ושחט על מקום החשוף מעט ושלימו לרוב, בין שהתחיל לשחוט במקום השלם ופרע בחתך, בין שהכניס את הסכין בחתך ושלימו לרוב, שחיטתו כשרה. If the butcher slaughtered, if the trachea was already half cut, right? This can happen in some sort of injury that the animal has, and its trachea is half cut somewhere. As we will see in Hilchot Terefot in a later chapter, a um, a qaneh that is pasuk, right, a trachea that has this cut, is considered a terefa only if the cut is through a majority of the qaneh, right? But if it is only half, then it is not a terefa. So here we have an animal that is not a terefa because it's only half, but it also isn't enough for the shehita since we need a majority. Right, so if half of the qaneh, half of the trachea is already cut somewhere, and then he comes and cuts on the place where the cut is already there, and he cuts just a little bit, and in that little bit he makes it a majority. Whether he began his slaughter in uh, in some other place on the neck, some other place of the trachea, and cut from the beginning, uh, and and then and then hit the cut and made it a majority, or if he began the slaughter in at the place of the cut, right? He found the cut, put the knife into the hole, into the hole, and then completed it a little bit more to reach majority. This slaughter is valid. For here, we can see regarding a bird that it is impossible a uh, to have a terefa of a uh, of the qaneh if there's any action of shahita that was done, since as soon as you hit the majority, then it is uh, then it is also kasher, right? Because you only need one of the simanim, as opposed to the behemah where you need both. So it is possible that you finish it terov and it wasn't proper because the veshit wasn't cut properly. הלכה י"ב כל השוחט צריך לבדוק הסימנים לאחר השחיטה, שאם לא בדק ונחתך הראש קודם שיבדוק, הרי זו נבלה, ואפילו היה שוחט זריז ומהיר. Anyone who slaughters needs to check the two pipes after he did the slaughtering, meaning after he finishes the slaughter, he should open the neck and check to see that the trachea and the esophagus were cut as they should be cut. Because if he does not check and the head was cut off prior to him checking, this is considered a nevela. And even if the butcher is very fast and he's an expert in slaughter, and he can tell that he did it properly, that still doesn't count unless he actually checks and sees that they were cut properly. Right, meaning so they cut through the trachea and the esophagus, but you don't cut off the entirety of the head. You stop before you cut off the entirety of the head. Right, so he does the slaughter and then he stops, and then someone else comes and cuts off the whole head, and it's impossible to check. So this is considered a nevela. הלכה י"ג שכל בהמה בחייה אסורה עד שיוודע בוודאי שנשחטה שחיטה כשרה. Because any animal, because all animals, while they are alive, are considered prohibited, and until it becomes known that they were slaughtered, until it becomes known with certainty that they were slaughtered a valid slaughter, right? Meaning, so the animal originally has a status of being prohibited, and it is the shehita that gives it a status of being permitted, right? So in order to uproot the status of being prohibited and to give it a status of being permitted, this act of checking must be done in order to make that transition in its status. Now we'll be dealing with the proper medium, the proper knife that needs to be used for the slaughter. רואה זה דבר שוחטין, בכל, בין בסכין של מתכת, בין בסוד, בין בזכוכית, בין בקומית של לקני ערם, וכיוצא בהן מדברים החותכים. והוא שיהיה פי אחד, ולא יהיה בה פרם. And so, in what thing do we slaughter? With anything, right? Any medium can be used for slaughter. Whether it is a knife that is made of metal, or if it is some sort of flint that is made of stone, or whether it is a piece of glass, whether it is a right the this reed along the river that is you remove the membrane and then smooth it and make it sharp, right? I have a picture of it here, right? That they turned it into a sharp. They turned the reed into a sharp, having a sharp edge that it can cut. And so to any other thing that cuts. And this is so long as its blade is sharp and that it doesn't have a blemish. It doesn't have a bump. אבל אם היה כמו תלם בחודו של הדבר ששוחטים בו, ואפילו היה התלם קטן ביותר, שחיטתו פסולה. But if the blade had even this small little telem, a telem is like a bump, or like think of like a trench, right? Or you have a smooth ground, right? That's flat, and then a little small bump that goes down, has an incline down and then an incline up, right? That's a telem. Right here, you can see in this picture, the straight blade and then a bump, right? A diagonal, like a triangular trench, right? So if it has a telem bump in its on its blade, right on the blade of the thing that's being used for slaughtering, even if that bump was very, very small, the slaughter is invalid. היה התלם מרוח אחת לא ישחוט בה, ואם שחט דרך הרוח שאין הפרימה ניכרת בה, שחיטתו כשרה. If that same bump was only from one direction, meaning, right, so as we saw, it had the bump has, it's like a triangle, right? It has a diagonal going one way and a diagonal going the other way, right? But if it were not like that, but only in one direction, right? So it goes in one way, it has a diagonal and then continues straight, right? So the bump is only, right? So if you go along it, you're only going to feel the bump from one direction, because only in one direction are you going to hit the edge of the trench, right? You won't hit it from the other direction. Right? So if the bump was only from one direction, then you should not slaughter with it. But if you did slaughter with it, and you slaughtered only in the direction that the bump is not recognizable in, then the slaughter is valid, right? So, right, because then the edge isn't going to, right? The point of the shehita is that it needs to slice, and with this trench, it's not going to slice, but rather it's going to tear it, right? Because the edge of the bump is going to enter into the siman, into the trachea of the esophagus, and it'll just rip it as opposed to slicing through it, right? But if that bump is not, it is only in one direction, so then the edge will never hit the siman, and therefore the shehita will be valid. כיצד? How so? סכין שתיבדק בהולכה ולא תרגיש שיש בה פרם, וכשתחזיר אותה בהבאה תרגיש שיש בה פרם, אם שחט בה דרך הולכה ולא הביא, שחיטתו כשרה, ואם הביא, שחיטתו פסולה. So this last halacha, how is this so? A knife that is checked in one direction, in holacha, right? Holacha meaning that you are going away from your body, right? You're checking the knife with your fingernail, as we'll see in a bit, and you're checking it away from your body, and you don't feel that it has uh, any blemish, right? Because you're not going to feel the bump if it's only from one direction. But then when you come back towards you, then you feel it, because then you'll hit the edge, and you'll feel that it has a blemish. Then, if you slaughtered with that knife in the direction of away from you, right, that you slice with pushing the knife away from you, and you don't bring it back towards you, right, meaning that it's impossible for the assuming that you felt it properly, right? It's impossible for the bump to hit the for the edge of the bump to hit the siman, then the slaughter is valid. But if he did bring it back, then if he did slice in the direction of pulling the knife back towards you, then the slaughter is invalid. الخياط design. سكين שהיא עולה ויורדת כנחש ואין בה פגם שוחטין בה בחתחילה. A knife that goes up and down like a snake, right? So like this knife that you can see on the left here, where it goes up and down in like a wave like, right? So it doesn't have any edges, it doesn't have any bumps because it's not a sharp edge, but rather it's like a wave, right? And it's all smooth, right? So it goes up and down like a snake, but it does not have a blemish. It is permitted to slaughter with it even to begin with. בסכין שפיה חלק ואינה חדה, הואיל ואין בה פגם שוחטין בה, ואף על פי שהוליך והביא בה כל היום עד ששחטה, שחיטתו כשרה. But a knife whose blade is smooth, but it's not sharp, right? The blade is dull, right? Since it doesn't have a blemish, right? It can still be dull and not have a blemish, right? Dulling will just be that it's not smooth, right? So it's not a very sharp blade, right? So since it doesn't have a blemish, you're allowed to slaughter with it, and right, but it's not going to cut very well because it's not sharp, right? So even though you have to go back and forth all day long until it finally finishes the slaughter is still valid since it doesn't have this blemish. וסכין חדה שהושחזה והרי אינה חלקה אלא מגעה כמגע ראש השיבולת שהוא מסתבך באצבע, הואיל ואין בה פגם שוחטין בה. And a knife that is sharp, right? That has been sharpened, right? They took like a stone and they sharpened the knife, but it's not smooth, right? It's not smooth. Rather, it's feel when you touch it. It feels like the head of a like the stock, what's it called? The stock of a grain, I think it's called, right? Right, how you have a picture here, yeah, like this, right? So you have the stalk of the grain that that has all these little hairs, right? So it feels kind of rough, right? So too, this knife is not smooth, but rather it has all these like hairs of metal that make it like feel rough, right? So because it has these hairs of metal, your finger is going to like get stuck on it, right? It's not, but since it still doesn't have a pagam, it doesn't have a blemish, right? Because it doesn't have this bump that that gives it an edge, that the edge will then tear the siman. Therefore, you're allowed to slaughter with it. الخياط تيت التولش قناة أو شين أو شقصاص صور أو سيبورن وهرهن حدين وإن بهن بغام شحطين بهن. Someone who pulled out a reed or a tooth, or he cut a flint or a piece of his fingernail, and those things are very sharp and they have no blemish, it is permitted to slaughter with them. ואם נעשן בקרקע, לא ישחוט בהן כשהן נעושין, وإن شحت شحيته كشرا. And if he then took one of those things and then jabbed it into the ground, then you should not slaughter with them while they are jabbed into the ground. Um, right? Rather, he should hold them and slaughter with them, not have them stuck in the ground and then pull the neck on top of pull the neck back and forth along them to slaughter with them. And if he does so, if he does slaughter like this, then the slaughter is valid. شحت בהן כשהם מחוברים מתחילת בריאתן, קודם שיעקור אותן, שחיטתו פסולה, ואף על פי שאין בהן פרם. If he slaughtered with any of these things while they are still connected, as they originally were, right? So if he used a tooth uh, that is, he takes an animal and then with its tooth slaughters, or he takes his finger and cuts with his fingernail or something like this, without cutting the fingernail, right? He just goes with his finger back and forth. That is very sharp. Right, and he does this before without without uprooting that sharp object from his hand or from the mouth or from whatever it is from. Then the slaughter is invalid, even though that same medium did not have a blemish, right? The medium that is used for may not be mehubar may not be connected to what they are originally from. Rather, they must be uprooted. And so in the previous halakha, where they said that you then stick it back into the ground or something like this, it might look like it's like that, but it's not, right? So therefore, it's valid. הלכה כ"א, לקח לחי בהמה שיש בו, או לחי בהמה שיש בו שיניים חדים, או שחט בהן, שחיטתו פסולה, מפני שהן כמגל, אבל בשן אחת הקבועה בלחי, שוחט בה לכתחילה, ואף על פי שהיא קבועה בו. If a person takes a mouth, right? So this is a dead animal that he slaughtered the animal, right? So now, so the whole jaw, right, is disconnected from the body, right? But the teeth are still inside the jaw, right? So it is disconnected, but it's still it's still connected in the jaw, but disconnected from the body, right? So he takes this jaw, and the animal has many teeth that are all sharp, and he cuts with and he slaughters with them. This slaughter is invalid because they are like the magad, because they are like a sickle, right? A sickle that is used for harvesting, right? There's a picture here. This is a magad, this one that has this handle, and then it has it's shaped like a sickle, like an oval shape, and the sickle has these blades, but all the blades go in one direction, right? So, but since it has all these blades, and this is a prohibited form of slaughter because you're not actually, because it's not smooth, right? It's not slicing, it's tearing the simanim, right? And all these teeth are also like that since there's a separate tooth in each place. So they're also going to just tear the simanim, and therefore it's invalid. But if it's only with one tooth that is fixed in the jawbone, right? So he removed all of the teeth except for one of them, and that one tooth is very sharp. Then with that one tooth, he's allowed to slaughter with it even to begin with, even and even though it is fixed in the jawbone, right? Since the jaw was disconnected from the rest of the body, so that's considered fine. לבן הסכין באור ושחט בה שחיטתו כשרה. If he took a knife and he put in the fire and made it very hot, and then he slaughtered with it, that slaughter is valid because we say that the slicing of the knife is what actually cuts the simanim, and not the heat of the knife. So it doesn't burn it, rather it slices it. סכין שצידה אחד מגל וצידה השני יפה, לא ישחוט בצד היפה לכתחילה, גזירה שמא ישחוט בצד האחר. ואם שחט, הואיל וצידה היפה שחט, שחיטתו כשרה. So if you have a knife that has two parts, right? The bottom, right? So both of them were turned, right? So where you have a blade, or you have a piece of metal, and the right part of the upper of the knife has a magal, has this sickle, right? So it has all these sharp uh, things and sharp edges, and the bottom part is a knife that has been made sharp and smooth in the proper form, right? Like this picture on the side here, where you see the top half. See this whole top half is magal, and the bottom half is right. So here it is. You should not slaughter with the proper part, or the bottom part that is done properly. Should not slaughter with that to begin with, as a decree, as a rabbinic decree, lest you, right, because you have this knife, you might accidentally come and slaughter with the other side. So they decreed against it. But if you did slaughter with it, then it is, right, since he ended up slaughtering with a blade that was sharpened properly, then it is valid. You don't even have to say that if he slaughters with the other side that has the magal, then that is invalid. Or since it tears, it doesn't slice. Now we'll be dealing with the form of checking of the knife. השוחט צריך שיבדוק הסכין בחודה ומצד זה ומצד זה. A butcher, the slaughterer, must check the knife on its blade and from this side of the blade and that side of the blade, meaning from both sides of the blade, right? You can see that in this picture over here, right? Over here on the bottom, you have a blade. The blade is the part that runs along the middle, right? And this blade is supposed to be very sharp, right? So it's very narrow. And then it has these edges, right? And the edges of the blade are also very sharp. And when they come together in a triangular form, they form the blade that meets in the middle and slices and does the actual slicing. So the butcher needs to check the knife on both sides of the blade and on the blade itself. How does he do the checking? מוליכה ומביאה על בשר אצבעו, ומוליכה ומביאה על ציפורנו משלוש אורחותיה, שהם פיה ושני סבדין, כדי שלא יהיה בה פרם כלל, ואחר כך ישחוט בה. And so how does he check it? He takes his finger, right, the skin of his finger, right, he uses the index finger, and he puts it along the blade of the knife, and then he pushes the knife away from him, and then brings it back towards him, right? He does this on his skin, on the skin of his finger, and then he does it on his fingernail, and he does this from each of the three directions, from on the blade and from each of the two sides, right? So it ends up that he goes back and forth. He goes 12 times, right? He does back and forth along the blade, back and forth along the side, and back and forth along the other side, and he does all of those with just the skin of his finger, and then back and forth each way on the fingernail. Actually, six, right? Not 12. Six because back and forth is considered one, right? Because if there might be a blemish and only that you'll only feel in one direction, right? So you'll feel it going back, and then forth you might meet it, right? So you do this 6 times with each of these. The This is my opinion, and from my experience in checking my own knife and sharpening it, uh, and what is done today anyway, the fingernail is what is primarily used to identify these bumps. Yeah, the skin is not it's very difficult to feel a bump using the skin of your finger. In my opinion, the this doing this of the skin on the skin is not to check for any bumps, rather to feel how sharp the knife is. I think that's a much better explanation. It's also the explanation that Morigafech brings on this part, and the besar, its ba'o, goes in order to check the uh, check the sharpness, and then Rabbeinu says al siporno on his fingernail, and he does it in order to check that it doesn't have any bumps, right? So okay, so I'll finish the translation. So he goes back and forth on the skin of his finger, and then he goes back and forth on his fingernail from all three sides, which are the blade and both sides of the blade, so that there will not be any blemish whatsoever, and then he can slaughter with it. Then the knife is considered valid, and he may slaughter with it. הלכה כ"ד וצריך לבדוק כן אחר השחיטה, שאם המסע בה ברם אחר השחיטה, הרי זו ספק נבלה, שמא בעור נפגמה, וששחט סימנים בסכין פירום השחט. And he needs to also check the knife after the shahita. The same process they did prior, he should also do it after. Because if after the shahita he checks and he finds a bump in the after the shahita, this is a nevela out of doubt, because it's possible that when he sliced along the skin, right, as he was cutting along the skin prior to reaching the trachea and the esophagus, that while cutting the skin, the blade became blemished, right? That a blemish was formed in the knife in the process of cutting the skin. And then once he reaches the simanim, once he reaches the trachea and the esophagus, the knife is already blemished. And then it ends up being that he did the slaughter with a blemished knife. Therefore, לפיכך השוחט בהמות רבות או עופות רבים, צריך לבדוק בין כל אחת ואחת, שאם לא בדק, ובדק באחרונה, when he מוסף את הסכין פרומה, הכל ספק נבלות, ואפילו הראשונה. And therefore, a butcher who slaughters many animals or many birds, a knife between each and every slaughtering. Because if he doesn't check, and he only checks in the last one, and then he ends up finding that the knife has a blemish, since he can't know for certain at what point the knife became blemished, all of them become nevelot by doubt, even the first one, because it's possible that the blemish occurred on the neck of the skin of the neck of the first one, and then even the first one was improper. If he would have checked it between each and every one, then he might find that the fifth one is where the blemish occurred, and then only the fifth one would be prohibited, and the first through 4 would be permitted. הלכה כ"ה בדק הסכין ושחט בה, ולא בדקה אחר שחיטה, ושיבר בה עצם או עץ וכיוצא בהן, ואחר כך בדקה ומצאה פירומה, שחיטתו כשרה, שחזקת הסכין שנפגמה בדבר קשה ששיבר בה. If he checked the knife and it was fine, and then he slaughtered it, and he did not check it after the slaughter, and then he took the knife and like slammed it onto some like a bone or against a tree or something like this, and then he checks it and finds that it became blemished, this shahita, this slaughter is valid because the presumption is that the knife became blemished on the hard thing that he slammed it against, right? When he slammed it against the bone, that's probably when it became blemished and not in the actual slaughtering itself. Um, וכן אם פשע בה ולא בדקה, או שאבדה סכין עד שלא יבדוק, שחיטתו כשרה. And so too, if he did this purposefully and didn't check it, or if he lost his knife before he had the chance to check it, then the slaughter is kasher. Right? Since he checked, it had the presumption of being a kasher knife, and then the slaughter itself is also assumed to be done properly. כל טבח שלא בדק הסכין שלו ששוחט בה לפני חכם, ושחט בה לעצמו, בודקין אותה. אם נמצאת יפה ובדוקה, מנדין אותו, לפי שסומך על עצמו פעם אחרת, ותהיה פרומה, וישחוט בה. ואם נמצאת פרומה, מעבירין אותו, ומכריזין על כל בשר ששוחט, שהוא טרפה. Every butcher that does not check his knife that he is slaughtering with it in front of a hacham, right? Someone who knows the laws and is experienced with this, right? And he only puts and he relies on himself and his own checking, and he cut it and he did the slaughtering on his own when he was alone. Then we go and we check that knife. If the knife was fine and was checked properly, right? We see that it was fine. Then we boycott him, right? Because he relies on him. Because we assume that he'll also rely on himself some other time when the knife might be blemished, and then he'll slaughter with it. But if when we went and we checked after it, we found that it was actually blemished, then we remove him from his position, and we announce regarding all of the meat that he slaughtered that meat is a terifa. כמה הוא אורך הסכין ששוחט בה, כלשהו, והוא שלא יהיה דבר דק שנוקב ואינו שוחט, כמו ראש האזמן הקטן וכיוצא בו. And what is the length of the knife that does the knife need to be that he can slaughter with it? Length can be anything, right? Like even a little small thing. So long as it's not something that's so thin that it punctures and doesn't slice, right? Like the head of a needle or something like that, of a small needle or something like that, which are so small that they can't cut, they can't slice, but rather they puncture, right? So that would not be considered that would not be something that would be able to be used for a knife. הלכה כ"ח ומתי שוחטין בכל זמן בין ביום בין בלילה והוא שתהיה אבוקה עמו כדי שיראה מה יעשה. And when are you allowed to slaughter? At any time, whether in the day or at night. And this is but at night only so long as he had a torch or a lantern or something like this with him so that he can see what he's doing. But if he did slaughter even in the darkness, then his slaughter is still considered valid, so long as he did the slaughter properly. השוחט ביום הכיפורים או בשבת בשורר, אף על פי שאילו היה מזיד, היה מתחייב בנפשו, או מתחייב מלכות על יום הכיפורים, שחיטתו כשרה. A person who slaughters on Yom Kippur or on Shabbat unintentionally, right? This can be that he forgot that shahita is one of the melachot, one of the prohibited actions on Shabbat, or that he didn't know that it was Shabbat or Yom Kippurim, right? So if he does this slaughter by accident, even though if he did do it intentionally, he would have been liable for a death penalty, or he would have been liable for lashes if it were Yom Kippur. Then, even though all that is true, the slaughtering is still valid and is permitted to eat that meat, even though it's not permitted to eat that meat on Shabbat itself. For that, look at Chot Shabbat, where we saw that. With that, we've finished Perek Aleph. We'll start tomorrow, Perek Bet.